Hello, I'm Mika Maruyama, and I was a coordinator of the workshop Migration and European Politics conducted by the guest artist Arye Wachsmuth with Marina Gržinić at the Academy of Fine Arts. The 10 students participated in this workshop, which was held in March and April this year during the lockdown due to the COVID-19. So the whole process was done only online by using Zoom and email. As many schools and universities have been facing this difficulty, namely distance running, the condition of the workshop itself was challenging for both sides. I really appreciate all the effort and engagement of students and also Ali and Marina, even though we couldn't meet and see each other face to face and no physical contact to discuss and develop their works. The workshop is of course connected to Arye's practice as artist and activist, focusing on the migrants and politics of the West and the failed refugee politics of Austria and the EU. Especially we began the workshop with his proposition, we are approaching a new era of irresponsibility. So we discussed how or which way Europe has become a place where ultimately produces the deaths of people on its border and also within Europe. I think it is very clear that also during the pandemic, the inhuman treatment of migrants and refugees is reinforced constantly, and we are witnessing overcrowded refugee camps and growth of shelters left without any aid and support. In the workshop, we got many materials from Arye about articles, reports, documentary films, and his own documentation at the refugee camp. These materials are showing techniques of exclusion and death developed over the years. For instance, forced pushback and human rights violation have become everyday happening on the border between EU and non-EU countries. The question is that moral responsibility seems present, but remains unanswered or even ignored by the EU countries, so that they maintain their own nation-state sovereignty without legal consequences. So, based on this context, many questions emerged from our discussion. How has the EU approaches to its own Convention on Human Rights transformed? What is the relationship between cultural formation and the policy against refugees and migrants? How are media transporting agony? How should we treat the disturbing image of violence? These issues are always working together with materialization of the European policy. And this materialization also happening in our daily life around us. 10 students with different backgrounds, some are also migrants in Austria, investigated their own subject about migration and European politics. Their topics include collective memory, cultural heritage, community, as well as media, propaganda, and landscape. Their examinations expanded into visual conjunction as one poster in order to unveil Western morality, which incorporate forms of violence, this simulation of European solidarity and configuration of this discrimination. So today we have 3 students, Lars Kollros, Shaya Safaisini, and Pia S, to talk about their works.
Thank you. Yeah, hello, and thank you very much that I can take part at this symposium. And of course, I'm very proud and happy that I could add a small piece to this exhibition. The artwork itself is a poster in the design of a travel advertisement from 2011 for the North Syrian area. and some texts of this I kept, but I blended them with official travel warnings from now, and also replaced the images with photos from now. So on the other hand, I'm very sad because the workshop and the resulting artworks was not about some historic incident from the past. So the fascists of Daesh are still operating in the north of Syria and Iraq, where operating is a very euphemistic term for fascist terrorists. People flee from fascists in a civil war, and we here in Austria, but also in Germany, discuss if we maybe rescue a few kids from Moria, or if that would maybe motivate others to flee. The European Union, awarded with a Nobel Peace Prize, made a contract with Erdogan to keep away the refugees. The same Erdogan who is suspected to support Daesh and who also fights against the Kurds in the area. And the same European Union that ignores the dying in the Mediterranean Sea and that criminalizes help. And where are these people fleeing from? What would we do if the city would be destroyed by a civil war, the stadiums would become jails, and the government would build concentration camps to kill the opposition or people from another religion? It's not so hard to imagine, because it happened exactly here. There was no more way to fight from inside the society. With this history, we have a special responsibility to the world and to the future. So, when we remind the design of my poster, a travel advertisement, traveling around the world, who can travel free in the world? It's a post-colonialistic pattern. Who can travel free, and where are the often cheap and exotic destinations? But the welcoming hosts are not welcome here. So our works are now in a museum. This does not mean that they should be seen as an illustration of something that happened in the past. Rather, they should remind us that things like these stories of traumatic pasts are still happening in front of our eyes, and we must not ignore them if we want to get back our humanity. We cannot change the past, but we can and we must remind the past, learn from the past, and avoid that these traumatic things happen again.
Hello. I'm Shaya Safaisini and come from Iran. I produced the poster that uses collage of newspapers and magazines to ask a question, who is us, in the Austrian context. There are many Afghan immigrants and asylum seekers in Iran who unfortunately live in a very poor condition. One can see that they are employed in the most dangerous and difficult occupations, especially they are busy in the heavy construction work. They are low paid and has no security. Besides, they have no right when the children are not allowed to attend school. With this background, I read the book No Friend But the Mountains, written by Behruz Buchani, and also a few documentaries. I became more familiar with the problems of immigrants and refugees. Interestingly, many of these problems are similar in their home country and the country of arrival. In this context, one can see that Vienna has hosted many immigrants through the years who have lived together for a long time. Statistics show that more than 1/3 of Viennese are not born in Austria, which means that Vienna is an international city with people from different parts of the world. Unfortunately, in the recent years, there are some political parties which tend to focus on the nationality instead of humanity. The new motto of the right-wing party, Holen wir unser Wien zurück, that means we take our Vienna back, motivated me to use a collage of newspapers and reports to remind that Vienna is an international city, and as an immigrant, artists prefer an international city with tolerance and friendship. Hate has no place in such cities. Indeed, the main goal of this work is to show the diversity of Vienna regarding immigrations, and also try to remind the importance of peace and friendship. Thank you.
Hello, hi, I'm Pia Weissinger, and I painted a picture for the poster. On the 27th of August 2015, 71 refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq were found dead in an airtight refrigerated truck on a breakdown lane near Pandorf in Austria. The next day, a photo of the scene showing dead bodies piled on top of the other was published in some newspapers. By taking the original image that had soon become unavailable to the public and transforming it into a painting, the work attempts to question the media and the masses that seem to regard showing brutal images as something shameful or as a concession of guilt or sensationalism. The media is rejecting, even repulsing pictures of death, of suffering, pain. That is a sociological development of the last decades, which could be watched in media history. On one part, we are being attracted by video games, horror movies, and crime stories when the culprit is one single person, even a small group. On the other part, photos and pictures of a real-life disaster, of tragic victims, are being deleted promptly. The question certainly is, are we the culprit as a society, and therefore quickly deleting the picture of the refugee truck on the Austrian freeway? The shame for certain shortcomings in many of us as an individual, the shame in state-influenced media and politics could influence the thought and reactions in many of us, and accelerating such reactions. And that was the reason why I painted the picture. Thank you.